Hello, my name is David Braun, and today is October the 21st, 2020. For those of you that don't know me, I've been appraising since 1976, and yes, you can do the math. I have also been doing predictive modeling in valuation for over 20 years. A few years back, I wrote a book called The Valuation Analyst, Research and Extracting Adjustment Rates. You can buy that book on Amazon. The primary reason I wrote that book was that I was having a lot of my appraisal customers and friends telling me they were running regression and other types, paired sales, other types of market extraction techniques, and they weren't happy with their results. And it seems at that time there was a huge push for appraisers to support their adjustments with some type of statistical extraction techniques. And appraisers were frustrated because they weren't able to meet the expectations of users. So I wrote The Valuation Analyst, and it's a research book where in the laboratory we used a lot of mathematics to actually prove what the limits were to extracting adjustment rates. And there are some real limits, which leads to the current problem that we've had. Do I say current problem? It's the problem that we've had for the past about 5 years that appraisers have been working hard to improve their analysis techniques. So the problem is the outputs from regression, match paired analysis, sensitivity analysis, cost-based analysis, interviews, all different types of extraction techniques give you results that are all over the place. Now in the book, I explain why that is. I explain that that is because in real estate markets, sales prices randomly vary. Just for no reason, a house may sell for $195 or it may sell for $205,000. So that's the real problem. And most of the time in your classes, what you deal with is what's called perfect data. And in perfect data, it does work out. But that's why you might go to a class, come back from your class, and then go, I've been trying to apply what I learned in my class. It doesn't work with real data. So that's the problem that we're up against. Now let's talk about the state of the profession. We are in some stage of modernizing the appraisal process. And there's basically, when you get right down to it, two parts to appraising. There's data gathering and there's analysis. In data gathering, you look at who's gathering the data. And in this case, we're looking at whether a trainee can do it. Can a third party collector do it? What are we gathering? Right now, we are trying to gather everything we can, but we do have some confidentiality issues with quality, condition rating, some of the others that are considered confidential information. Then there's rating systems. How do you rate location or how do you rate view? And then you have database rules, which you can think of things like the UAD and MISMO. I think I've got that in right. And most importantly is what is the ability to access the data? I think right now in the modernization process, we are ahead in data gathering. We are farther along than we are in analysis. Now let's talk about analysis. Most of the time people are looking to enhance traditional adjustment extraction techniques with statistical methodologies. And also the profession is working on developing predictive modeling methods that may not involve adjustment rates at all. So that's where we are. Now, the solution that I've come with, and to be honest, I have spent most of my time on the analysis side, and I have developed TLeaves, and it is an interactive, multi-integrative predictive process. Okay, it's not an AVM, and it's certainly not a traditional AVM where you've got the word automated or automated valuation method. In the TLeaves, in order to meet the project parameters that we'll go over, it was necessary to leave the appraiser very involved in the analysis. And the TLeaves then can be used for appraisals, evaluations, or could be a fourth approach to value. Let's look at the project parameters. I wanted it to be able to work with 5 comparable properties. And yes, as a statistical-minded appraiser, I would like to use 20 or 30 properties. But the reality is, until we get our data gathering process better, there's a lot of work for each comparable property that we put in an analysis. For example, you may have to look at your MLS and pull up pictures to get a quality and a condition rating. Or you may have to interview owners to get condition and property conditions. All of that takes time. And right now we're kind of in the same frying pan as Colonel Sanders was back in the early 60s. He knew if he could fry chicken and it be completely done in about 4 to 6 minutes, he could sell all the chicken he wanted. So he had to modify pressure cookers to handle frying grease. And after many, many tries, he finally was successful. And as the story goes, which I haven't researched this to tell you it's completely true, that most of his life, he was not necessarily unsuccessful or a loser, but he didn't make big strides financially in most of his life. And then when he was in his 50s doing this, before he died, he was a billionaire. So we're kind of in that same frying pan. If we can get these valuations out quicker, there's money to be made for appraisers in the appraisal profession. All right, so one is to only need 5 comparable properties. The second is to be able to solve for 5 active property component coefficients. So we're not looking at one, and for the appraiser, that means there's 5 property components we would have to adjust for. And we want to be accurate within 6% of the real value of a reasonable value 90% of the time. All right, the next, we want to develop validation outputs to recognize when the error is greater than 6%, the other 10% of the time. We need to be able to recognize that. And my project time was 3 months. Now let's look at how it ended up. Project results, we did stay with 5 comparable sales with the interaction with the appraiser to help us with several little things and a few big things. We were able to solve for 7 active property coefficients and be accurate within 5%, 95 or more percent of the time. We did develop validation and outputs to recognize when the error is greater than 6%. And the actual time period of this project was actually in excess of 14 months. And I might mention to some of you that have tried to go to my website, I have stopped doing direct selling to appraisers because there's just not enough hours in the day for me to do a few appraisals a week and then work on projects like this 20 to 30 hours a week in addition to that. So now I just do research. And as we talked about, I've been appraising since 1976. I'm trying to wrap up what I can contribute to the appraisal profession and get it disseminated back to appraisers. Okay. Now this process, if you're a data scientist that works in trying to predict values, and maybe you're an AVM technician, which is very different than an AVM, you know these parameters are pretty exciting. They shouldn't be able to be done, but let's look how we did it. So the process involves some recognized appraisal techniques, recognized statistical techniques, and some new proprietary techniques. Now these new proprietary techniques, I kind of stumbled on them when I did the book, The Valuation Analyst, because I did what I would call in that book, I didn't just read about stuff, I actually put my hands on the numbers. And when you really get into stuff and put your hands on the numbers, and there's no blueprint to follow, it really makes your mind think and stumble onto things. So I was able to find some things that helped with this. So let's take a look at this real quick. We're not going to take much time because I know everybody's busy. So here's where you might have the information entered on a grid, input grid. And so we have the comps 1 through 5, and we have subject information. The rating system I use, location 1 to 5, site 1 to 5. The quality and condition, or the AUDs, it's backwards 6 to 1. I didn't want to do this, but I did it because I do want data to be able to flow in when possible. Okay, then we would load this data. All right, and then we would think about the interest rate. Here's an input for the appraiser. The appraiser thinks the interest rate is, the appreciation rate in this case is appreciating the market condition rate somewhere between 0 and 8%, and then it will run. Now, this takes about 20 seconds to run. Now, finding the market condition rate without help from the appraiser, I found to be an insurmountable problem. There's just, when I would try to program this to find a rate from like a minus 15% to a plus 15%, I just didn't do very well. So it was necessary to narrow the rate down. Now, if I know the rate, and I put, for example, it used 4%, if I had put 4 to 4, this would have only taken a few seconds to run. So it takes about 10 times as long to run when it searches for a market condition rate. It's just that hard to do. So we got an output here of 282. Now for the appraiser, what we want to know, is this a good output that's 95% of the time, or is it one of the 5% that it's not good? So we can look at some things here. The model strength is strong. The component similarity is 5 out of 7, and the closer to 7, the better. The component ranking, it's a 5.5 out of 6. We don't want it to be 1 or 6. 5.5 means 2 tied for 6, but that doesn't bother me too much. And then the subject component rating that the computer makes, it was 10%. The subject was 10% from the average of the comps, and that's really good. Now, we look at our residual analysis, and we want to look at two things. What's the highest? Here's one. 8.2 is the highest. 5.2 is the lowest, okay? Now, in addition, we have a chart here that's got 4 or 5 things to look at, and you can stop this and read this about the chart. But we would like the subject, which is the orange, to be within the blue. That's a bunch of data, and we don't like it to be out of the blue. And the red line and black line, we would like for them to be exactly the same, right on top of each other, and you can see they cross. And that's where this is data that's not perfect data, so they're not going to be just right. But I can look at that and tell you that's pretty good. Now, another tool is R squared for the adjusted to predicted prices is 0.85. Now, the odd thing about R squared, if it's over 0.7, that's evidence that you're getting a good answer. But if it's less than 0.7, that is not evidence that it's a bad answer. But in this case, that's good evidence. Then we have a ranking analysis, because the main thing we want the appraiser to be able to do is to kind of certify that they agree with the value. So what this has done, it has taken the sales and automatically ordered them by the predicted price here. And what the appraiser wants to do is see if they agree. These minuses mean that the predictions didn't necessarily agree with the sales prices. But keep in mind, it might have been a price that should have sold, property that should have sold for $250 and it sold for $235. So it doesn't always mean that the model's wrong. So what normally the appraiser would do is say, hey, the subject property here should be better than this property, and they would look at this information and see if they agree. Here they would look and say this information should be, the subject property should be similar to this one, and similar to this one, but should not be as good as this. So if they're satisfied with that, then they would go back And then they would write in that they think from ranking, they think it's about 282,000, and their final value is 282,000. And then they kind of certify to this confirmation that they did review it. They didn't just take the answer. Now, this, like I said, this right now is set up in an evaluation. That's where I'm running it, where you would be doing an evaluation that does not conform to USPAP. But it could also be done as an appraisal. But either way, and let me get the number here, the USPAP advisory opinion 37 says if you use some type of an automated valuation model, you should know something about it. So what we've also incorporated into this is a training module. And this training module, and I'm not going to go into it here right now, but this training module allows you to create a real estate market and take sales from that where you know the right answers. Okay, so let's, for example, right now I think right now we've got a 4% appreciation rate. So that's one. We've got condition, that's two. I'm going to add the quality. I'm going to say there's some properties that are rated. If you're an appraiser, you're probably not going to use 5 or 1 if the subject's a 3 or a 4. So I'm going to put 2 to 4. The size is 16 to 22. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 active coefficients to solve for. We've got the garage. They can either be 2 or 3. Let's take our baths and say maybe 6 to 8. Okay. And see, this is set up to automatically change. You could do these by hand, but I've got them automated. And then let's take the location from 1 to 5. And we didn't use any 1 or 5s, but we used some 2 to 4s. All right. Now, if I hit random here, these things you can see kind of change on the worksheet. And that's just an aid for me to work quicker. Now, let's count how many we're looking for. 1, 2, condition, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're looking for 7. And I'll tell you what, instead of that, I'm going to use a pool because I want to show where we need to so that's really 8, but let's go back to 3 and 3. Let's get to 7. And instead of 6, let's use minus 10 to 10. So right now we're going to randomly change the values of what the comp should be to sales prices that are randomly varied between a minus 10 and a 10%. Now in Excel, you normally hit the F9 key, but F9 key, it stops my Camtasia. So I'm going to hit the random button and you see these numbers change. Okay, so let's run this through the model. So if you were using this and training on it, you would transfer this information. Now before I do, let's look here. The pool is 30,000, so remember that because this is a hypothetical market. So let's transfer this information and let's load this data, and we can leave this 0 to 8 again. We know the answer is 4. We'll see what it uses. This is left in from the last run. But if I hit run now, it's going to say, hey, you got to help me with the pool. So this is a place that with 5 sales, something like a pool you may not be able to get. So the appraiser has to put this in by their knowledge of the market or some extraction technique or the cost basis, whatever. Then we're going to hit run. Now this is going to take about 22 seconds to run. We're going to look at it and see if we agree with the output, and we may not. It may give us an output we don't agree with, and if we don't agree with the output, we would replace one of the sales. We're not going to do that today. We don't have time, but we would replace one of the sales and rerun it. And there will be a button in here that you would hit to say, which sale would you suggest I replace, and tell me what I'm looking for. Okay, so now the output is 267. The model strength is medium. The component similarity is 4 out of 7, so that's 3.5 and better is good. The component rating is 3 out of 6. That's good. It's not a 1 or a 6. It's a 3. And the subject varies from the average of all the comps by the computer rating 20%, and 0.3 is 30% is kind of a parameter, and that's good. Now, 4.4 is not bad, and there's things I would like to say and go on, but I'll have to wait till later to explain more about the residual analysis. But at any rate, we have one that's 11%. And remember, we want to stay within 5. So that's a little scary. We've got 2 over. So we want to recognize there's an issue there, but on average, we're below 5%. Let's see what our model shows. Our model shows the data is kind of scattered out. See how they're not all touching? Also, our 2 lines that we'd like to be on top of each other or parallel actually cross. They don't totally agree with each other. And remember what I said that I kind of proved in the book, The Valuation Analyst. That's because we randomized and varied the sales prices by plus or minus 10%. That's a lot. That's a hefty amount. So this shows probably it couldn't get it. But the good news is where they do cross right here is very similar to the subject. So they agree right in here. So by this chart, I would say good. What do we got down here? 0.91, that's good. And then we're not going to take time to do it. But then you'd also do like we said earlier, you look for any negatives. There's no negatives in this line of the inconsistencies. This line right here, there's no negatives. And then you would look at the subject and see if it's reasonable that it's worth about 20,000 more than this one, and that it's worth about 30,000 less than this one. So you do that analysis. So probably right now, without doing this whole analysis, I would agree with this number of 267. Now, because this is a training module, we can go back to the market and see how well we did. Wow. We predicted 267 and the actual number is 267. So with searching in this one, and I didn't just keep doing this till I got a good answer. This is the first one I tried since I turned the recorder on. At a randomized at a minus 10%, plus or minus 10%, 4% appreciation rate, 7 active variables, and active is a word I use that nobody else uses, but see here location, it's 3 and 3. They're all the same, but the market gives it weight at 2,000 per rating, but it's an inactive because we don't have to solve for it. So it's present. There is a coefficient, but we don't care about it, so we won't call it inactive. But we did 7 active with only 5 sales. Now the question is, some appraisers may say, oh my gosh, here it is. This is going to put us out of business, but this won't work without the appraiser at this point. Now, I do believe sometime in the future, when our databases are excellent and we can rack in 20 or 30 sales, and you take what I've got with some artificial intelligence added in, it's going to be able to do it. So I don't know if that's a decade away, 15 years away, 5 years away. I don't really know. But right now, today, this is not going to put appraisers out of work. The goal is to be like the Colonel Sanders, and we divvy up billions of dollars because the users of appraisers come back to us rather than go other routes. Because right now, today, no matter what you're being told, there are an awful lot of appraisals that are being done without an appraiser. And I say appraisals, I just say valuations. It may not be definitionally an appraisal, but a lot of valuations are being done in the lending process without the input of appraiser. So this gives us the way to say, hey, we can do better than what you're using, and we can do it almost as quickly. Okay, so this is meant to be a game changer for appraisers. If you have any questions, please contact me at davidbraunproperties@gmail.com. At this time, I'm looking for partners or a partner to help me disseminate this product into the valuation profession. Thanks for watching.